Question 1.1 of Unit C is to explain the purposes of types of assessment used in education and training. So in other words, we need to explain the purpose of the big three different types of assessments used within teaching and training. We have initial, we have formative and summative. So in other words, we need to explain the purpose of each one. Essentially, how is each assessment method used within education and training? So we are going to talk you through each of the different types and purposes. So here we have a table where we have the three main types. We have initial, formative and summative. And to answer this question, you need to simply explain the purpose of each one. So we are going to do this together. So let's take initial assessment. So initial assessment is essentially the beginning of your learner's journey. So yourself as a teacher or trainer will conduct some form of initial assessment at the start of your qualification. So the purpose, the reason we do that is to really check our learners' previous knowledge, their prior knowledge, their previous skills, and also abilities at the beginning of the course to ensure that the course is right for them. So it helps you as a teacher to understand where the learner is at, whether they are capable for the course, looking at their aspirations, their knowledge to date, just seeing whether or not there's any gaps within their knowledge. And so it really helps you and the learner to start the course to start their journey on the right foot. So it helps to identify the learner's strengths, their areas for development, and whether or not they need additional support with your qualification. So, and we can obviously arrange for that. So it could be that you arrange a learning support assistant to support them with the course. Perhaps that you can devise some additional work for them, such as homework. You could provide them with a reading list so they could actually do some work in their own time to facilitate and support them with their learning as well. So it's a fantastic way to set some achievable course targets. So you can sit down with each learner after the initial assessment stage and come up with some targets and to say, by this date, you would have achieved this much on your course. And so it helps to break down the course into manageable chunks. So the course or qualification is less daunting for the learner as well. There are many different types of initial assessment. It could include perhaps an interview or a discussion. It could be a phone conversation with the learner. An application form is very clear because it states whether or not the learner has any perhaps learning requirements. So they can disclose to you whether they do have a particular need, and you as the teacher can recognize that, and then you can have a conversation with the learner as well. There are other types of initial assessment. It could be a fun or dynamic icebreaker. So it's a fantastic way for you to get to know your individual learners. It could be an observation. So it could be that your learners have to perform a skill before going on to your course, and you could observe them. You can see their skills and qualities. Furthermore, initial assessments could be perhaps a literacy or numeracy test. These could be online, of course, some type of quiz as well. But it's a fantastic way to see your learners' motivations for the course, their pre or prior knowledge, and whether or not they will be a success for your course. With initial assessments, if you feel that a learner isn't quite right for the course and they do have significant gaps within their knowledge, you could signpost them to another course or qualification and just advise that you think a different pathway would be suitable for them at this moment in time. And once they achieve that qualification, then of course they could attend your course as well. So initial assessments or diagnostic assessments are a fantastic way of supporting your learners. They really do set a benchmark for success, and they break down the actual course journey into manageable stages. So without initial assessment, learners can just come onto your course and they might fail, they might think, you know what, it's not for me, and they may leave, and that can affect your course numbers, that could affect your course reputation as well. So initial assessments are really supportive. They're a fantastic tool, and the results can of course be shared with managers and fellow teachers who you work with as well. So it's clear evidence that learners it might render some results, and that can be evidence towards a learner's portfolio, or it sets a fantastic benchmark for them to proceed there. So that, in a nutshell, is the initial assessment. So it happens at the start of your course or qualification, and it's a fantastic way of setting the learner off on the right foot to begin their course with confidence as well. So here we have a paragraph that I've written on initial assessment. So for this assignment, a paragraph of information on the purpose of initial assessments is sufficient to meet the pass criteria. You can, of course, include some examples of initial assessments like I have done there. If you're currently teaching as well, do feel free to include some examples of initial assessments to really highlight what you do within your teaching role. But I'd say a paragraph or two on the purpose of initial assessment is sufficient there. We're moving on to formative assessment. So formative is otherwise known as the on-course assessment. So what is the purpose? So the purpose of formative assessment is to check in with learners during the course to see whether or not they're on the right track with their course progress. So things such as quizzes, games, discussions, debates, homework. These types of assessments are often informal, and they're a great way for you as a teacher to see whether or not the learner is on track with their course progress, to see whether they're acquiring the knowledge or skills in order to pass the qualification. So as a teacher, it's absolutely vital that we conduct formative assessments, though, so we're checking in with our learners as much as possible to see whether or not they're taking on board the information, whether they're grasping the course content as well. So think of the formative assessment as a pilot. So if a pilot flies a plane from point A to point B, they will take off and they will check in with their destination, and there will be a two-way conversation between the pilot and the destination, the air traffic control, about how their flight is progressing. So it's the same with teaching a course or qualification, that you're checking in with your learners to make sure that they're comfortable with the course, whether they are grasping the knowledge as mentioned. And then at the end of the course, we have the summative assessment as well, which we'll come on to. But with your formative assessment, there are a variety of methods which you can use and utilize. It could be, as mentioned before, quizzes, games. It could be an observation, a practical activity, paired work, group work. You could get your learners to perform some presentations, for example. So these types of assessments, they happen within the classroom. They are devised by you. So you have the power to select the types of formative assessments you feel are most useful there. So formative assessment is otherwise known as the on-course assessment, and the purpose is to check in with learners and to ensure that they are on the right track with their course progression. Okay, hopefully that's useful. But once again, I've left that blank for you to write your own definition there. But once again, a paragraph of information on the purpose, as well as some examples, would be sufficient to hit the pass criteria there. The final one, we have summative assessment. So summative or summary. Summative assessment happens at the end of the course. So summative assessment is a fantastic way of ensuring that learners have acquired the entire knowledge of the course. So it's the final hurdle, and these are often formal. They're often supervised by a teacher or an examiner as well. So typical summative assessment types are you have examinations. It could be a final multiple choice test, a final lesson observation. It could be a portfolio of assignments that you have to hand in to be marked as well. It could be a formal presentation, whether that's an individual or a group presentation. But it's very much putting all of those skills into practice. Have learners achieved the course aim and the objectives? And once again, it could be down to you or your awarding body, for that matter, to decide which summative assessment is appropriate for your qualification as well. So here at TrainAid, one of our courses, as you know, is a level 3 award in education and training. We have 3 written assignments and also a 15-minute micro teach. So the micro teach would be the summative assessment as an example. It's where all learners will obviously understand about the different roles and responsibilities of a teacher, how to promote inclusive practice, and how to understand about assessment methods as well. So the micro teach is very much the final course element, the final piece of the puzzle where learners are showcasing their teaching skills. So it's all about how you as a teacher create the summative assessment and how you prepare your learners for this as well. But in essence, summative assessments are there to test whether or not learners have achieved the required skills and knowledge and skills to perform their future role, as it were. So summative assessments, once again, we're looking for a paragraph of information, and we're looking for you to include some examples here. So once again, use the initial assessment detail as a bit of a benchmark in terms of the level of detail when you're writing for the formative and summative assessment explanations there. Thank you so much for watching. We are just going to pause the video now, and yes, please go ahead, and I would like for you to complete the purpose of initial, formative and summative assessment. So thank you for watching criteria 1.1 on the Unit C microteach playlist.